So as Mrs. Gerlach said earlier, Bavaria is a little bit behind the Poland games industry, but is eager to catch up. Someone who is more than familiar with the Bavarian games industry is Hendrik Lesser, who delivers the first keynote today. Hendrik Lesser is founder and CEO at Remote Control Productions in Munich, but he is also managing director at the Bavarian Games Industry Association Games Bavaria Munich, and last but not least, he is president at European Games Developer Federation EGDF. Please welcome Hendrik Lesser.
I'm quite happy to also address you for a little bit here. Thank you, Games Bavaria, for making this possible, and also Bayern International to set it up. And of course, and last but not least, to Judith Gerlach and the Ministry for Digital here in Bavaria to support this. I'm quite happy to give a little bit of insight of the Bavarian game scene and also give a little bit of shout out to our Polish friends, why it makes sense to work together. So first of all, why is Bavaria interesting for games and what's going on here? To be honest, I think we quite evolved a lot. 10, 15 years ago, there wasn't really that much, but now it's a very different landscape. We have now for 11 years a local subsidy here in Bavaria, which is quite nice. It's a bit over 2 million euros. And I think that's quite cool, especially for smaller and medium-sized teams to tackle into. What else has been done? Not only, of course, did the subsidy help for new teams to form, but it also helped to create some cool games, some of them with the subsidy, some of them without. A couple of those, if you don't know yet, is, for example, last year, Desperados 3 from Mimimi production, which was really well received from the players and from the critics, and as far as I know, also sold well. Another kind of example is Tibia from Sipsoft. It's a very old game, been running online for a long, long time, and I'm really happy that it's getting even stronger. Last year, the guys just announced that they gave an annual salary as a bonus last year of the uptick through Corona, which I think is awesome. The game is still worth to check out. It's a little bit like, if you remember, like Ultima Online, that was very much inspired, but definitely found its own style and its own way to make people happy. There's other examples of all kinds of studios, some which are a little bit older from the browser space with Travian, and all kinds of other examples. Traditionally, Munich has always been a hub in Germany for the subsidiaries of publishers. So we have 2K and Take-Two private division, which is of course all belonging to the same family here in Munich. Microsoft, we had back in the days, we had Sega, which doesn't exist anymore as a local subsidiary, but also some others. And of course, all of this helped that there is a real community here now. We have an IGDA chapter running for a long time. As I mentioned, Games Bavaria is also helping to foster the community. So we have ongoing meetings in what's called Werk 1. That's kind of a startup hub where we had all kinds of developers coming together, where we have a video game culture club doing regular events, of course, especially before Corona, and I'm pretty sure after Corona again, in a physical way. So what could be interesting for you when you think about Bavaria and how to cooperate? Again, I mentioned the subsidy, I mentioned the teams. Some of them will show some of the pitches later. If you think that's interesting, if that's inspiring to you, I think we're all here to connect, then do a shout out. I think a lot of the teams are open for either co-dev opportunities or even a full-blown co-production, which can be supported by the media fund or here by the local subsidy and maybe even by the Polish subsidy program too. For me to see all this blooming and fostering is quite nice. I'm also besides my actual work as running remote control productions, I'm the president of the European Game Developer Federation. That is what we call a meta association for a lot of national associations throughout Europe, lobbying directly in Brussels for better for better environment. So on the one hand side, giving feedback on regulatory initiatives, and on the other hand, and this is I think very important the last couple of years, on subsidy programs to push for original European content. And this is why I'm also quite happy of this initiative, because I think creating European content with what I always say, the best culture technique there has ever been. So gaming is not just for kids and entertainment, as we all know, it's a culture technique where we can do all kinds of things. We can do classic games, which we all remember from our childhood, but we can do serious games. We can use this to gamify stuff. So I think there is lots of opportunities. And as I said, in Europe, I think it's important that we create our own narratives, that we are proud of our cultural heritage, and that we also use that culture technique to tell stories which we either think are new, or we basically chip in all those stories we already had the last centuries, and even more than that, to create our own take in the digital world. And so I'm really happy that we have this opportunity here to do this, have a look at the games, think about the studios which kind of resonate to you, talk to the people in the studios, ask us. We also have a regional association here called Games Bavaria Munich, where I think Johannes is talking later. I'm part of that too. Most of the more mature dev studios in Bavaria are. So we also definitely an address where you can ask your questions or get some intros. Let me think if I forgot something. Overall, you know, this is really a call to action. This is a call to inspire. This is a call to create awareness and to connect people. So hopefully you got a little bit of inspired, and you take the chance and reach out and have that kind of discussion. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program, and all the best.
When you think about the Polish games industry, the first thing that comes in mind are probably the lighthouses of the country with their stellar blockbusters like The Witcher, but there is much, much more. There are some reasons Poland can be proud of their vital and vibrant industry. We have an expert with us. It's Dr. Jakub Marszałkowski, who has been honored with the award of the Ministry of Culture as an organizer and promoter working for game developers. And Jakub is co-founder and board member at Indie Games Poland Foundation, plus head of Games-Industrie Conference. Welcome, Jakub.
I'm very happy to be here with you and be able to talk a little bit of the Polish game industry. Maybe we are not as successful as we were portrayed here by our German friends. We had some degree of success, we had some degree of luck, but there is still a lot to be done for the games in Poland, for the growth of the industry. First of all, I would like to invite you all to read more of our Game-Industrie of Poland report. That's maybe the best reading of Polish game industry if you would like to learn more. I think we put all the important information, all the important factors that are about the industry in this report. So that's it. That's the report. I will show some main features of the industry, some most important numbers in a moment. But also, if you can read in Polish, the second very good reading that you could follow is Polski Game Dev PL magazine, our first and hopefully not last magazine in Poland that has a lot of information about games industry, growth, changes, and everything. So let's go a little bit through the main elements of the report. It was prepared together by a group of institutions interested in growth of game industry in Poland, and we looked through all the major factors. So now few words about the consumer market. Maybe it's not that important here, as the consumer market is quite separate from the game production. I think it's the same for all the game industries all around. I've seen data from German industry organization let's say 96% of the games on German market is non-German games. We have similar numbers for Poland. We would even say 97% maybe of games on Polish markets are imported. But it's still a good market, and that might be interested for German developers, especially if you are doing PC indie games. So here you have basic numbers. Market worth some nearly $600 million in 2019 by Newzoo. I'm not a huge fan of this number and this estimation. I think it uses a little bit too much data on free-to-play market, on mobile market. It relies a little bit too much on number of mobile users to estimate the market size. On the other hand, we have data from all key players on PC games distribution, like Steam, like GOG, like Epic Games, and in all those rankings, Polish market for PC games is usually ranked as at 5th to 8th place globally. So yeah, it's obviously smaller than the German gaming market, which is very important for Polish exported, for Polish exporters. But please do not overlook Polish market for PC games. If you're doing PC games, you are often going straight to some other markets like Russian, Brazilian, which seem to be bigger, but in the fact are not. And we have that confirmed often also by developers, by publishers, that player communities from Poland are among the biggest that they have in their games. So now to game industry. We found that we have something like 440 development studios in Poland that are active. You have to be very careful where we're looking for those numbers, because there is rotation. And we found at least 120 studios that we were marking as studios back in 2017 when doing previous research, that 120 studios are not longer active. Either they suspended their development or dropped it completely. The people working there often are in some other companies, and those studios are not anymore producing games. So there is change happening. This industry, this market, games are very rapidly changing. What is good, to replace those 120 studios, we found 160 new studios emerging and producing games. So there is still growth by 40 studios. It's not as rapid growth as in the past. We had seen faster growth on the number of studios prior to 2017. I would say even 100 studios yearly. Now we are observing something like 40 studios over 3 years. So maybe we are at some level of saturation for the number of studios in Poland, and this will not grow as fast anymore. The number that surprised us mostly about the Polish games industry is nearly 10,000 people working in the game production. We're trying to track that continuously. So this is data from actually something like summer of 2020. We are in February 2021. I can tell you we already passed the 10,000 people in the game industry, because we have new data from several companies only, and they are growing like crazy. So this is interesting number, because we do not know as exactly as this number was growing comparing to some other numbers. We did a proper calculation of that for the first time, but we can look at the numbers that experts were claiming that Polish game industry might have in the past, and we would see some 25% growth yearly. And we would see another fun fact, like 3 or 6 years ago, where we were 6,000 people or 4,000 people, everyone was afraid that the people to do games, that the experts we need, that the workforce is really difficult to find, and we will not find enough people to do games in the next year. And then we found another 4 or another 6,000 people doing games. Where do they all come from? not really a thing that we know that well. We know there is big movement from abroad to do games in Poland right now, which is both exciting and still a little bit strange because salaries in Poland are not as great as, for example, in Germany. But we also know a large part of this movement is from Ukraine and Belarus, which have some struggles, and then Polish salaries are obviously a little bit better. So we are something in between, not great, not terrible. Will this continue to grow? That's a very good question. If we would keep the pace of growth at 25% per year, then in 3 years we would have 22,000 people. So this would be size of the British game industry. I think it's not realistic. But again, 3 years ago, if I would be asked if we reach 10,000 people, which is something around size of the German game industry, I would say no, it's not realistic. We do something like 400 ERT game releases annually as the Polish game industry. We calculated everything here, and this is per platform. So this is not games, this is releases. We often do several platforms. We often follow this pattern, Steam first and then consoles to make some money. And the industry revenue reached over 2 billion zloty, which is 479 million euro. We tracked that a little bit back. We compared to that to some data that we had from the past, and we think this chart is quite interesting because if you see at the top of those bars here, then the industry, the income of entire industry is changing. The growth is changing. It was 7%. It is 32%. This is mostly to huge share of that income being obviously CD Projekt Red. They do have some cycle depending on their biggest title. I think we have seen this moment in 2008 when their share was the smallest one in the history, below 20%. And I think now with the release of Cyberpunk and huge sales of Cyberpunk, their share will be again bigger, and this will increase the income of the entire industry by a lot. But then if you look at the dark red bars, you see that the sector minus CD Projekt Red is growing quite steadily. It's 27-28% year to year since 2016. We had some doubts about this again in 2016. Probably no one would believe that. Actually, we have seen some prognoses that since it will be down part of the cycle at CDPR, the entire industry will drop. But then the rest of the companies made up for a lot of this income. So please keep in mind that we have more than CDPR doing game in Poland. And this is maybe also a little bit of, as you see, there is a lot of other stuff in this report. So if you'd like to read, I invite you to. So parts of Polish game industry are also important in that picture. So we have the stock exchange thingy. I've heard yesterday from a discussion with my noble panelists that we will have panel with in 3 hours, I think, that we will discuss that a little bit, because this is apparently not a thing in Germany, but we have a very strong presence of game development on stock exchange in Warsaw. Actually, this data is quite not valid anymore, because again, it's August 2020. I think now, after 6 more months, there is more than 50 studios on Warsaw Stock Exchange, and the last one was doing IPO just yesterday. So this is growing really rapidly. Still, majority of those studios are small studios. We have this maybe funny thing that we have indies that are publicly listed. Can indie be publicly listed? We don't know. Well, maybe we can discuss that on the panel. But still keep in mind that like 390 companies in Polish industry are not in the stock market. This is more than 70% of the workplaces. Well, now maybe a little bit less with big, huge, and big. What's the name? I forgot the second big developer that also made the stock exchange. So maybe we moved down this part to 60%, but still majority of the workforces of the Polish game industry is actually not on the stock exchange. This might change. There is huge movement to go to the stock exchange. This is greatly increasing the situation of founding of game development in Poland. At least if you are a developer that has at least, I don't know, 10, 20 people, you can try to go there and get funding from there. This might be one of the major factors of growth in the last few years, and maybe also in some close future. Or maybe we're seeing a bubble. No one actually knows that. So what else should I explain about the industry? Well, the employment is actually following the usual expected state. So there is power law. You have this chart where there is very few companies that are really huge, starting obviously with CD Projekt Red, and then you have long tail of companies that are 10 people, 5 people, single guy. Actually, I love those stories of a single developer that managed to make a game and sell this game in hundreds of thousands copies globally. This shows how fantastic this industry is and how different it is even from, I think, other creative industries. It's difficult to do that even in other creative industries. So actually, this distribution of workforce, distribution of sizes of company follows the usual. You could also portray that as the Pareto law. So like 20% of companies have 80% of employees. Yeah, that's also the way we are discussing that kind of thing. And also what we have seen, I have that here, what we have seen as, can I pause that? No, probably not. So we also have seen huge growth of the teaching for the game industry. I did some research of how well this market is developed in Germany in the past. So I know we're not close there as Germany is, but we found recently researching that we have over 60 classes, courses, specializations. I don't want to say universities, but because it's often one university offering 3 of them or something like this. Also, I don't want to say courses because it varies what it actually is. But we have like 60 opportunities for students to get learning on how to get in game industry, how to do games, also how to research games, and this is rapidly growing. First in numbers, recently also in quality, and maybe this is a little bit part of the answer, where those people that make those 10,000 people making games in Poland today, where did they come from? We have some specialties in game development in Poland. I think I have like 3 or 4 more minutes, so I will try to talk a little bit more without the script. So yeah, obviously we are good in simulation games, which Germany is also producing, publishing, but it's also market for that. We're quite good in horrors recently. We do porting and boutique publishing, especially Switch is big market for Polish games. That's funny story. Like since forever, PC was the main market for games, and in 2019, the number of releases on Switch actually surpassed the number of releases on PC. Those are not necessarily exclusives. Those are mostly ports from PC, sometimes ports from mobile. But yeah, we might be some kind of powerhouse of producing and porting games for Switch as well. And what is often overseen, Poland is huge industry for third-party development, outsourcing, localization, quality assurance. We have big companies doing that. We have small studios doing part of their portfolio that way to make money to produce games first party. I probably could talk like that forever, but I don't know if I should. Should I?
You have 1 minute left.
1 minute left. Okay, to sum up, I think there is plenty of possibility to cooperate with game industry in Poland. Still, costs are lower and the talents are fantastic. We can do a little bit of everything. While we focus maybe mainly on production of PC games, like 30% of companies claim to do something with mobile. So really anything you would like in your business, you can find that in Poland. Maybe what's not that strong at the moment is some game tech. So no, we have no Polish Unity, no Polish Unreal so far. But yeah, maybe this will change at some point, or we will be just masters of the development.
So let's talk about money and where to get it from to finance your game. A really great way is Creative Europe, the culture funding program of the European Union. And it's time to get information firsthand about this program. We are excited to have two experts with us. First, we have Marzena Cieślik. She's Media Sub-Program Coordinator at Creative Europe Desk Poland. And we have Ewa Szurogajlo, Funding Consultant at Creative Europe Desk in Munich. So let's see what Europe can do for game developers.
Good afternoon. My name is Marzena Cieślik. I represent Creative Europe Desk Poland, and I'm here today together with Ewa Szurogajlo that works for the Creative Europe Desk based in Munich. Creative Europe desks can be found in every country participating in Creative Europe program. In some cases, like in Poland, there is one desk covering the whole country. In bigger markets such as Germany, there are regional desks, and Eva works for the Munich one. And in a nutshell, we are very happy and thrilled to talk a bit about the Creative Europe support for the gaming industry today. Thank you very much for the invite. So yes, Creative Europe program is the program of the European Commission, managed by the Education, Audiovisual and Culture Executive Agency. The program is supporting the creative, cultural and audiovisual sectors in Poland. Its main objectives are to promote European cultural diversity, the European heritage, strengthen the competitiveness of the European cultural creative sectors, and develop the audience for the European works. Program also supports the development of European professional skills. The last edition of the program for the years 2014-2020 is already finished, and now we are waiting for the new program for the next 7 years to be published. Eva will talk about it in a second. I will focus mainly on what's done till now. I will also mention that the Creative Europe program is divided into 3 strands: media, supporting audiovisual sector; culture, covering culture and creative sector, excluding audiovisual ones; and cross-sectoral strand that supports the initiatives, activities that are somewhere in the borderline of those two strands. So for the last 7 years, starting from 2014, Creative Europe program supported the development of video games, which was the direct support given for the gaming industry. Within the scheme, there was support given for the development of narrative video games that were intended for commercial use. The scheme was open for the companies based in the countries participating in Media Sub program, and which had for which the video game development, video game production was the main activity. And what's also important, they also had to prove that they had somehow of success, meaning they developed at least one narrative video games before applying for the program. What was important in terms of evaluation was the originality, the innovation of the projects, But they also had to include some important issues strengthening the cultural diversity and European cultural identity and heritage. And what's also important, they had to show that they have international cross-border potential, meaning they were intended to travel also abroad, out of the country of production development. So a bit of statistics. Over the last 7 years, Creative Europe program was able to support 211 projects, the developments of video games. Of course, some of them are already published, some are still in development or prototype phase. And the total amount for those 211 projects was more than 24 million euro. And I'm very happy to show some of the Polish statistics because, as it was told before, the Polish gaming industry is doing quite well. 20 projects developed by Polish companies received the funding for the total amount of almost 2.5 million euro. And just to name the few projects supported through those 7 years, I will mention The Witcher, which was already mentioned today earlier, but also Frostpunk, developed by 11-bit studios, already published, and the game which is still in development prototype phase, Our Life on Water, which is currently developed by smaller company, Different Tales. Right, and that's it from my side. Now we are moving to Bavaria, so I'll give the floor to Eva. Thank you.
Thank you, Marzena. And well, we have every reason to be proud of our Bavarian industry as well. As you can see, 1/3 of all German games that have received the media funding in the past 7 years, in total it was 33 German games, 1/3 went to Bavarian projects, which is, I guess, quite an achievement. Most of our applicants are small and even very small and medium-sized companies. And some of the projects you can see here are from Realmforge, it's space-based Startopia, and some in the prototype status still from Pixel Maniacs, Escape the Loop, and Acer Interactive, The Restless Echo. We hope that in the next program, I don't see, that in the next Creative Europe Media Program for the years 2021 and until 27, we will be able to achieve similar success rates, and of course, hopefully many of them with Bavarian Polish cooperation projects. And the look into future is, let's say, for the moment, not as detailed as we would like it to be. As we signed up for that event some time ago, we hope that the program will be launched at this point of time, but it is not launched yet. So we expect an official launch of the new Creative Europe Media or Creative Europe program as such in the second quarter of this year, around April or May. And this will be a point of time when we would have more details, but we will share the basic and information that we have right now with you. So the very good news and actually a great achievement on the European side is that the budget for the whole Creative Europe program was increased by almost 80% compared to the last 7-year program. Which is despite of the pandemic, despite Brexit, and it reaches now for the next 7 years almost or even over 2.5 billion euros. And the media part of it, so the funding for the audiovisual content and production or industry is over 1.4 billion euros. This, of course, lets us hope that the funding per scheme will be higher and that the program will be able to fund to support more projects and equip them with higher funding. As you can see, media will group its funding schemes in 3 clusters, and the video game support will be under the content cluster. This cluster is, let's say, it has an objective of supporting and increasing the cross-border cooperation and also reinforcing European brands. We, as you can also see, it's not only video games as a funding scheme, as from what we know now. The scheme will be also opened to include immersive content. It was also, in the previous program, it was already possible to apply with VR or AR or XR games. And now it seems that it won't be only it will be immersive content in a larger context, meaning that all kinds of VR experiences will be also included. Let's say the bad news in the context is that we don't expect a call for application to be opened in 2021. So what we know now, the funding for games will be, of the call for applications will be opened in 2022. But if we hopefully soon go back to our normal yearly rhythm, where the calls for applications are published in autumn, we may hope that in autumn this year we will already have some more details on what's coming up for the games industry and who can apply, what are the funding sums, what are the award criteria. So don't forget to get in touch with us after the summertime, and we hope that we will have more details for you at that point of time. One thing I would also like to mention, I'm not sure whether you can see it on the screen because mine is cut at this very point. A novelty in a way and an important issue is that there are some, let's say, cross-cutting topics that are to be found in every funding scheme of media, and these are the topics of greening and diversity and equality. Meaning that every applicant will have to have and present a strategy of dealing with green strategies and dealing with diversity, inclusion and equality. So it's definitely a plus for you if you either have projects focusing on that topic, or your company is already in the management of the company or in the management of your projects is including these two issues as you go, so to speak. I would say that's it from me at the moment, and we are looking forward to your questions.
And you are still invited to use the networking feature in Eventory to get in touch with speakers and participants. For example, the next one here. We all know there are no guarantees in life, and the same is true for the success of game development. Even with the greatest idea and the most brilliant team, there is no guarantee that it will succeed. In this context, it's a reassuring thing that the Polish National Development Bank, the BGK, is supporting the gaming sector with their guarantee activity. What it actually means will be explained by Mateusz Olszak. He is a Deputy Director in the board of directors at European Association of Guarantee Institutions and Director of Development and Sales Office at the Polish National Development Bank. Welcome.
Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Mateusz Olszak. I represent Bank Gospodarstwa Krajowego, which is a state development bank of Poland. Due to the fact that we do not have much time, I will skip the introduction part and I will go directly to the topic of today's presentation, which is BGK's guarantee activity, support for gaming sector. To be on the same page of understanding, I have prepared for you some questions that will help you to understand what is guarantee and what we are talking about, what we deliver to the bank, to the market, and what is the most important, what problem do we solve with our guarantees. So let's focus on the first question, which is what is the aim of our guarantee activity? So the aim of the guarantee is to support micro, small and medium enterprises and also large enterprises in access to external financing. The external financing is very important because it enables companies to grow, to prosper. So on some part of your development, for sure you will need external financing. And what problem do we solve with our guarantees? We provide guarantee, maybe I will put it this way. If you do not have collateral for working capital and investment credit, you can use our guarantee. The problem of lack of collateral is especially visible and present in the creative sectors like gaming sector, because gaming sector do not have tangible assets. So it is very hard for the banks to assess the value, the worth of your assets. Therefore, quite often gaming companies do not have sufficient collateral to cover working capital or investment credit. And this problem is being solved with our guarantees. So we deliver to the market a loan repayment guarantee. And this is the instrument that will help you access to external financing. So the ultimate beneficiary of our support is the entrepreneur. We do not support the banks, we support the entrepreneurs. So just to present you the current guarantee offer, I will concentrate on the 4 out of 7 products that we have in our offer, because 4 of them are suitable for the gaming industry. So the de minimis portfolio guarantee line, Cosme portfolio guarantee line for innovators, like also Creative Europe, which is dedicated product to support, for example, gaming sector. Just to let you know and to give you the rough idea what is the scale of operations of our guarantee activity, please have a look on the right side of this slide where you have the figures. So just to give you the overview and the background, in the last year, we have provided guarantees in the total amount of almost 9 billion euro. And the question is why I'm presenting this data, just to give you the idea that our products are working, that there is a huge amount, that there is a huge demand for our products, and simply these big figures confirm that this is a very effective product. Okay, next slide. Basic business model. I think this is one of the most important slides in this presentation because it describes how this whole business model works. So describing the process from the left, you see our bank, which is the BGK. We provide the guarantee to the lending bank or the crediting bank. Based on our guarantee, crediting bank provides credit, working capital credit or investment credit to the entrepreneur. And analyzing this graph from the right side, so from the perspective of entrepreneur, from the perspective of the gaming company, you see that there are relations between entrepreneur and the crediting bank. And these are the only relations in this business model because there is no need to apply to the BGK. If, for example, gaming company would like to have a working capital credit or investment credit, it applies to the bank which signed agreement with BGK. Currently, we have more than 25 banks in our portfolio. So the entrepreneur interested in the credit submits the application for the credit together with the application with for our guarantee at the crediting bank. So there's no need to apply to the BGK, as I mentioned. This is a very effective and simple business model. What are the key features of our guarantee scheme? Portfolio mode. So we distribute our guarantees via lending banks. So depending on the product, we cooperate with 20, 25 or 30 banks. So simply speaking, our product is available almost in every corner of our country. We have a national coverage with our products. On one hand, we have state aid products. On the other, we have market-based products. So I'm pretty sure that all of you can find a suitable guarantee product for you. So I'll move to the next slide because I would like to devote a few minutes to discuss also about the benefits of our guarantee activity. But let's focus now on the products. What products do we have currently? What are the features of the product dedicated to the gaming sector? So as I mentioned, we have 4 products. The guarantee rate in all of these products is up to 80%. This is maximum guarantee coverage that we can provide. The guarantee amount differentiate depending on the product, but the maximum level of the guarantee is 2.5 million euro. What is very important here is the pricing, because most of them are free of charge. In case of Cosme, you need to pay a small fee due to the fact that this is a market-based product, but most of the products are free of charge. And the type of the loan that we cover is the type of the loan that I have mentioned a few times. So this is the investment and working capital loans. This kind of loans we cover with our guarantee. What is important and what I would like to mention here is the portfolio guarantee line for innovators. This is the last product that we have here. This is the combination. This product is very unique because this is the combination of guarantee on the one hand and the grant on the other. So if you apply for our product, you not only receive a collateral for your credit, but you also receive a grant. The grant is in the form of subsidy to the interest rates that you pay, and this subsidy is 5% of the interest that you pay on 5% of the interest that you pay. So it's a very unique product. And what is the most important thing? This product is free of charge. So from the perspective of the entrepreneur, our guarantee offer is very attractive. And we have supported hundreds of thousands of SMEs so far. In the whole portfolio, we have many companies that represent gaming sector. So I strongly recommend and can fully assure you that these products will help you. What are the advantages of our product and what are the benefits? First of all, you receive a very good collateral, the collateral that banks prefer because we are the state development bank. Our products are free of charge, and what is also important, we impose on the banks that they have to transfer the advantage that we give them to the entrepreneur. Using other words, it means that they have to provide you a better credit conditions than in comparison to the regular credit. So you can have a higher amount of the credit, or you can have a lower cost of financing, or you can have a longer period of the credit comparing to the situation, comparing to the credit conditions without our guarantee. Our institution is a mission-driven institution. We are not the profit-driven institution like commercial banks. Therefore, we do not generate profits out of this guarantee institution, guarantee activity, and that is why we provide most of our products free of charge. And I just looked on the clock, and I think that I have utilized my time for the presentation. I would like to also to give you the space to ask me questions, or I have discussed with the organizer of this great event that if you have any questions afterwards, you can call me or send me an email, because I think that the agenda is pretty tight, so I'm not sure that how much time we will have for the questions and answers. So I will give the floor to the organizers now.
Given you have heard all the exciting stories about the Polish games industry, and you want to invest in the country and the amazing talent, how do you actually do that? Our next talk is called Taking Advantage of Investment Incentives for the Gaming Sector in Poland. And our next speaker is Karolina Król. She is expert in Center for Investments at the Polish Investment and Trade Agency, specializing in issues related to state aid. So let's see what Poland has to offer. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation for this event. I will share a presentation with you. I hope you can see it on the full screen right now. Okay. Short introduction for those who don't know us, what we do and who we are. I represent the Polish Investment and Trade Agency, which is a state-owned organization supporting investments in Poland. And what we do, we prepare inter alia tailor-made macroeconomic, HR, legal, sectoral data packs. We identify potential partners and suppliers. We also introduce entrepreneurs to startups and technology companies. We support building partnerships with R&D institutions, and we also advise in public aid. So today I will concentrate on possible investment incentives for gaming sector. Gaming sector is complex and consists of many activities, business activities. It depends on the type of your project, what kind of incentive you can apply for. So I strongly encourage you to contact us via our website, via our application form on our website, or write to me directly if you have any specific questions on the particular incentives. The incentives that are available for your sector might be a CIT exemption, which is available on the whole territory of Poland. It depends on the level of the incentive, depends on your eligible costs. It means on your investment expenditures. According to the public aid law, it can be tangible and intangible assets, for example, computers, for example, rent, for example, all the necessary equipment that you need for the investment. And it can be also 2-year labor costs. And you can get from 10 up to 50% of your investment costs in CIT exemption that you can use up to 15 years. What you need to do to be able to apply for it, you have to submit an application that you submit to the local institutions called special economic zones, and you need to fulfill qualitative and quantitative criteria. If you need more information, I strongly recommend you to visit our website, because unfortunately we don't have time to explain all the details. Another program that might be interesting for you is a governmental program of cash grants. You can apply for grants for R&D centers. if you run such an activity. Good news is that the minimum criteria to be able to apply for this incentive will be reduced soon, even up to 50%. So if you see minimum eligible cost of 1 million zloty to be able to apply for it, it will be soon probably even 500,000. So for more information, I also recommend you to contact us, because now I would like to concentrate on tax incentives that are available for innovative sector. So what we have, R&D center status, which gives you many opportunities to deduct some taxes and also to use EU funds with some easier rules, R&D tax cut and innovation box. And I will tell you more about innovation box incentives. What it is, it's easy to apply tax incentives for innovative companies, and you can use a preferential 5% tax rate for qualified income. What is this qualified income? It's income that is generated on intellectual property rights. And how long can you use the incentives? It's a long-term incentive, and you can apply, and it's applicable throughout the duration of the legal protection of the intellectual property right. Categories of intellectual property rights eligible for to benefit from the innovation box incentives are, for example, rights to inventions, but also copyrights to computer programs. And the basic condition that must be met by a taxpayer who wants to use the IP box incentives, taxpayer has to conduct research and development activity that led to creation, development or improvement of the qualified intellectual property. The taxpayer does not have to carry out the R&D works on their own. They may be outsourced, the works may be outsourced, and the right to use 5% tax rate or income obtained from qualified IP rights do not depend on the size of the entity or the form of the research of its research and development activities. And the formula to calculate the income, the tax is based on a so-called nexus approach. It can be complicated if you look at it for the first time, but you can see the example here, and what you need to take into consideration if you want to use this tax incentive. You have to prove your R&D costs. It can be carried out independently, or it can be costs of activities subcontracted to affiliated entity. Here in this example, you have income received from rights of computer program, 10 million zlotys, and if you have R&D costs 50,000 zlotys plus 200,000 zlotys, you can save up to 1.7 million Polish zlotys. And how you use this incentive? So first of all, the taxpayer may use the IP box only if the income is generated by him from qualified income and it's subject to taxation in Poland. Good news is that income might be earned abroad as long as it's income in as this income is subject to taxation in Poland. It can be also used by foreign taxpayers earning income on territory of Poland. The IP box preference is a solution that the taxpayer can use after the end of the tax year in the annual tax return. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. We are running out of time, so now I need to thank you, and I hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you very much. Also, here is the advice to get in contact with you via the networking tool here in Inventory, or just send an email. Thank you very much. I wish we had the text incentive here in Germany as well. Thank you for all the information. So next up is our panel called the Indie Game Dev Scene in Bavaria and in Poland. So we are really crossing borders, at least in virtual reality. You will meet some of the guys you've already seen today, but also completely new ones. Your personal anchorman is Dieter Marxreiter. He is founder and CEO of Marxreiter Communications, agency based in Munich that celebrated the 15th anniversary last year. So they claim to be the leading PR agency for games and related industries in Germany, Russia, and Eastern Europe. Dieter, the stage is yours.
I wanted to introduce my co-panelists. We have Marta Fiak from 11-Bit Studios and Dominika Zott from Women in Games, Johannes Roth from Mimimi Productions in Bavaria, and Jakub Marszałkowski, who is founder of Indie Games in Poland and the Games-Industrie Conference. Yeah, guys, what is the current situation of the indie game scenes in Bavaria and Poland? What do you see as current trends?
Let me start. So I think in Germany, especially in Bavaria, we have a lot of indies that are being founded by students, basically people going to a game design course, and then they have this cool idea of a game and they want to found a company, a startup for that, become a full-time indie. And one of the current trends obviously is that they are looking at the German grant that has been released kind of late last year. It's still a tough situation because it's not really meant for super small companies and startups. There are some problems involved with that if you want to apply for that kind of grant. But you can combine them, in our case, with the FFF Bayern, kind of the regional funding program that we have in Bavaria. So I think that's a current trend that we have, that a lot of these smaller upcoming studios are looking at both the national grant and the regional funding program and how to combine them in a cool way. So in the end, it's not really a trend because it's about how to get money and fund your first game, basically. So how is that in Poland?
So from my perspective as a developer, there are kind of two trends. They always want the people who just are starting out, and the best entry to the game industry is for them to fund an indie to make their first game, you know, after finishing some kind of degree in game design or just wanting to go. But the second group of indies that are starting to appear more and more often, but they were always on the scene, is indie companies constructed by veterans. Because in Poland we have those huge companies like Techland, like CD Projekt Red, and a lot of people want that indie dream out of there. So they move away and start a company, an indie place to you know, make the authorial voice heard without that huge structure. And in terms of funding, we also have in Poland few grants that are helpful, but I think Kuba, you can tell a little bit more about that side.
Yeah, we have several support schemes. I think it's not that great on the point of starting a small indie team, and there the money is more difficult to reach. It's a little bit easier for funding to scale up when you are 10 people and you would like to become 30 people or something like this. I think that the first game is actually the most difficult step. A little bit help here comes maybe from the huge popularity of games on the Warsaw stock market, which is growing, which is maybe a little too much around now. Maybe there is some bubble, but yeah, it did help in the last years to found several studios or to grow several studios. So that's a trend as well.
And how is the relationship with non-indies developing? So bigger publishers or AAA publishers, is that something you see as becoming better and better now that the indie scenes are established?
So it depends from company to company and depends on how long they are established, how big they are. The trend is that younger and smaller teams tend to cooperate with Polish publishers. We grew quite a lot of those. Not all of them are maybe that globally successful, but some are developing. The studios, the companies that are established for longer time, they have probably easier access for international publishers, so they are reaching out as far as possible from Munich to Singapore or whatever. So it's a whole variety of schemes.
Yes, I would agree for Bavaria as well, and I would say the relationship between really small and upcoming studios and nowadays publishers like Handy Games or Deep Silver or even Travian, I think they also supported quite a few projects. It's getting much better. So younger companies are now more on the radar of these publishers. A few years ago, they haven't been that much in touch. I think that improved a lot. I think it's a really good development in Bavaria as well.
What are your takes on other sources of funding, like work for hire, doing outsourcing for other companies as an indie, and as well maybe Jakub, you could tell us a little bit more about the Polish stock market, because in Bavaria, Germany, we not even have such a thing. So the stock market is very applicable to game studios, especially indies.
So the work for hire is a thing here for studios. We've seen several studios running this dual model where they have some teams that are producing external development, doing some services, doing porting often, and that makes them money to do first party development, to do their own IPs and things like that. It's the brighter side, maybe if you have that really as several teams. So you have maybe people working on less glorious part of game development because they are doing services, but you're also doing something first party, your own IP. It's more problematic when you have only one team and you try to separate that in time. So you share your time between doing some external work and doing some of your work. It not always ends that great. Sometimes you land in the space where you are doing third party forever because it's like it's probably quite addictive. It's like 3 more months, 1 more project, and we will have enough to make our own game or something like this.
Yeah, but I think especially with the teams that are able to have 2 teams internal, the experience that they can get for doing third-party work is extremely valuable, especially when we are talking about companies that already established a form of the name on the market, and they can attract high-class clients. So the amount of experience and knowledge that they can also gain from that kind of partnership can directly translate to a lot better first-party game. But I fully agree with Jakub that there's the danger of becoming just a mill, like a mill, a factory for other companies when it's not planned as if someone wants to go to the first party, and then you are just a backend, which is also a valid version if this is what you want your company to be.
This might be a great idea that it is best to learn for some other people's money, yeah? So not for your own funding or something like this.
Yep.
I think it's also important to have the understanding of what you want from the company that you're actually creating. So whether you're going to progress more into being an independent studio that is working on their own IP and own product, or you would rather focus on developing something that you might need the support of the publisher, because then it's strongly related to the business plan that you should develop for your company, and then you can put the third party, the outsourcing, as a backup plan for the funding or as the relevant source of income for funding your game. But it strongly depends also on which direction you want to progress with your team.
So one question I have is, we are facing the same problems here. If you run into that trap of too much work for hire, maybe you'll never be able to work on the game that you wanted to actually make. But as Dieter mentioned, there's this stock market thing going on in Poland. So how does that work? Is that like a viable option? Let's say if you have really dedicated single project team that wants to work on this really cool prototype and make that one game and not being distracted by work for hire, is going to the stock market an option there, or how does it work?
From my experience, it is an option, but it also depends what is your project and how developed is your studio. From what I've experienced in the past, I'd say that this probably shouldn't be the first thing you consider once you're starting the studio and you have no prior experience in developing the game. Or even if you have the experience, you need to take under consideration the fact that entering the stock market, debuting on that, is actually a very serious business move. And you need to have the business backup for your company to deliver the value to the stockholders, to deliver the value to all the parties involved in that. And the process of entering the market may seem easy once you look at the number of companies we have on the stock market now in Poland, but it's still very well complicated and complicated process that includes many steps on the way. So I'd suggest to reconsider how much time you can dedicate to that process and whether you have people qualified to do the business part of the job.
People is a good point. How is recruitment current for indies in your regions, and how you think indies should scale their companies to be a successful entity?
For me, it's hard to say as an indie, because I think 11-bit studios for quite a while is not a typical indie company, not an indie company no more. But I have to say that after this war of mine, as creating a brand, the recruitment process became a lot easier. And then with scale and growth, what we are able to do is to grab people from around the world and attract talent from different places. But I don't see this as a visible option for the young starting indie company. And from my personal experience, what grabs people is the vision and the fair contract. Just that, to get that. And then the scaling after the first game is another beast entirely.
I personally think recruiting is always difficult. It's really tough when you're at the first stage of founding the company. Maybe you need to find the business person that you don't have within your team. Maybe you need a game designer to help you. That's tough. Obviously, it gets easier the better you are known, but then again, now, for example, Mimimi is approaching the 30 to 40 employee stage. We have to start thinking about hiring internationally, because in the beginning it was pretty okay to just hire, students and juniors and teach them how we want to make games. But these days, sometimes it would help to have more senior talent at the studio, because the onboarding might be easier or something like that. And there is not a big pool of these people available on the market. So already you have to think outside of the box, and you can't use kind of the traditional ways anymore. So I guess other than that, it's still important to grow consciously and take it slow, make wise decisions here and there, because I don't know of any indie that wanted to grow super fast. It's usually not a problem, but obviously, adding people to your company adds a lot of overhead. It changes maybe the culture of the company, all those things you have to keep in your mind. Do you even know what your culture is? Stuff like that. So keep that in mind as well. Besides just finding the right person, you also have to do a lot to make it work.
To describe this a little bit as some kind of process, I would show that we have one longer ongoing process that is some internationalization of Polish industry. We are popular. People want to work here. People want to even move here and do some work here. So we've seen this process for years, and it's growing faster and faster and more. Then COVID came, and this put a second process on this first process. So work that is remote, work that is where people don't see each other sometimes in person for weeks, which has some difficulties. We have companies that are claiming it's not working for game development because you have to communicate, you have to meet, you have to share thoughts, ideas, stuff like that. It maybe would work a little better on software development, where you do from A to B and that's done, but not necessarily for such a creative process as games. But then COVID opened also some new possibilities. So some companies got convinced to remote work, and we've seen people to get back on the market that were not that much on the market because they were not willing to relocate from some smaller place. I think also COVID is speeding up many processes that would happen otherwise on longer period of time. So I think it's speeding up this internationalization. If we are ready to hire someone that is in small town in Poland and will not be in person on our meetings, then why shouldn't we hire someone that is, I don't know, in Brazil, in Germany, in Scandinavia? Well, in Scandinavia, maybe not because costs are crazy, but yeah, Brazil is very doable. So I see companies reaching more and farther for specialists. I see our freelancers to work more globally on projects. I think it got faster.
And did the number of women that joined the gaming industry in your regions improve over the last years, or is it still not so easy?
We see like an improvement in this area, but mostly in the field of HR and marketing, because women are still a bit afraid of joining the developers team. I wouldn't say that it's not happening. It is, and many amazing women are joining the teams that are creating the games. We have one here as well. But I'd like to see more girls understanding their opportunities in the industry, and I believe this is crucial to give them the understanding of the roles that are available in the field, because what I'm experiencing a lot as a person who is strongly involved in the in encouraging women to join the industry is that they even don't see what is available on the table. They don't know nothing about the roles. So the education is the key here, I'd say.
I would also agree that this is the surplus of women in games is something to come in the next few years, because now we are doing the groundwork. Now we are doing the education, showing it as a possibility, showing women that are currently in games, and already in Poland there are many really strong ladies in chief positions. And then in few years, those girls will know that this is an option, will study, will develop good experience, and then they will get employed, because employing a girl only, it's a girl, it's a disservice to everyone. So it's a process. It has to take a little bit of time, but I think we are on a good way. And looking on projects like, for example, TN Girls in Coding, you can see a whole new generation of girls who are going into sciences, into programming, into all of that. So that disparity will change in time. And I'm quite hopeful if the heat won't kill us.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I would also agree. And one story that really made me happy is from like 5 or 6 years ago, where one game design university told me that they had like a 50-50 share of actual students being male, female. The mix is changing, and if it starts with the education, obviously we also have more options to hire there. So I agree. I think it's gonna get much better, and there are lots of cool people out there trying to help with that, which is also really required. It's still tough, so it's a way, but we are getting there.
Yeah, so word university brings me to the next point. Is there a typical career for an indie? Is there anything you would advise young indies to do or absolutely not to do?
Don't be overconfident of your experience and what you want to do. Like young indies, I think all around the world do this error over and over, and we explain, yeah, listen to people that have more experience. They eat their teeth on doing that, and they failed many times, and they stood up and are going further. And you're doing your first game, you don't know everything.
Yeah, I think there is something with listening to feedback. I also understand that young counterculture and the indies, the young indies, wanted to show that the old way was wrong and all of that, and that's perfectly fine. That's part of the process. But what I would suggest is think on every piece of feedback. You can dismiss it, and that's perfectly fine. It's your creative decision. But have that moment of examining that feedback from every side if there's something in it. It can be, but it can be also empty. But just don't dismiss it as, oh, this old dinosaur that played Amiga will tell me something. Don't do that. Just look at it. And also drugs. Don't do that too much.
I'd say that it's also, I'll stress the importance of remembering that if you're actually creating the studio that you want to be the part, like your full-time job, you need to remember that there is this business part to that. So it's not only about the creating the game. It's crucial for your game to succeed, but it's not enough to create a game. If you want it to be a long-term company that will bring you a profit and you'll earn on your hobby, on your passion, then you need to plan it, and then you need to remember about the people, about the different departments. Maybe your departments will consist of one person per each in the beginning, but you need to remember about planning that in advance, not to be surprised by the business reality.
Yeah. So business reality also has to do with the work-life situation of a developer. Do you see any positive changes in this that developers maybe right now live healthier lives than 5 years ago?
With the COVID on the table, it strongly depends. For some people, it's just anecdotal knowledge. I have not read any kind of studies or survey, but based on the anecdotal knowledge, currently it really strongly depends on the person. Some people regain their work-life balance really well by working at home. Other people will never leave their work actually by working at home, so that work-life balance disappeared. And of course, it's hard to talk about that balance in the aftermath of releasing Cyberpunk. So yeah, I'm not going to say it's got better in the last 5 years, there are some still things. But people are a lot more aware of that life after work is more important, which is good, which is a good first step.
Yeah, I would agree. It's important that people are aware of it, that gamers are aware of it, that companies are aware of it, like what's happening with crunch, how bad can it be, how bad can it get. So if you talk about it, things usually hopefully improve. Then I think it's a difficult topic because, for us at Mimimi, for example, it's really important to not crunch. Sometimes it still happens, but obviously I've been around the planet and talked to other developers, and some of them, like their biggest dream, the whole reason for becoming a game designer was to one day work on a project and dive in with all their passion for 3 years nonstop. And that's what they want to do. They want to write history. So I think it's tough to really judge that on a personal level. And I think if someone wants to achieve that kind of level of art and wants to go in there this way, there are places where you can still do that. And there's, as the industry grows more diverse, I think there are different approaches everywhere. So I think it's getting better. And at least for the last couple of years, from German studios that sometimes had a lot of crunch, like in the early 2000s, I've never heard a real horror story anymore. So I think the awareness is also getting better there in terms of being long-term sustainable, basically. But then again, we are not making cyberpunk in Germany. So yeah, maybe one day.
So I work from home for like a dozen of years, and I'm not really doing games. I'm in events industry probably, so maybe I should sit that one out. But like 2 remarks. It seems easy to justify that doing events without crunch is even more difficult than doing games without crunch, but we still try to plan better to reduce the crunch, to avoid the crunch as far as possible. Year after year, we end up badly in the end. Anyway, we have to do some crunch like few days before the event, and then next year we will try again to plan better, and maybe at some point we will achieve. And also, as I work too much, I think it's very important of me when I hire people not to push my working too much addiction or something on the employees, to be straight with them that I'm stupid because I'm working too much. You never have to do that. I have completely no right to demand that of you.
Okay, great stuff. Events is a good point. If you could travel, to which event you would travel next? Besides GIC in Poland, to see Jakub, of course.
But it will be 2019 event or 2021 event?
Well, I don't know. Imagine it would be an event like 2019. Where would you go first? You can choose. You have one time machine slot ready for you waiting.
At this point, any of them, I'm desperate. I would love to go to some event again, and I think most of us would love to go. And yeah, we are sitting here and watching, looking at each other at the cameras. I think we as industry need physical events again desperately, but how quickly can that happen? No one knows.
I'm missing the smaller personal events quite a bit. So in Bavaria, we had Update Games, which was a yearly event and where we just met everyone from Bavaria. It was cool. It wasn't the most important event on the planet, but it had a certain feeling to it. The same was going for the German Dev Days, for example. But yeah, I also hope that one day it's gonna be possible to experience that again.
For me, it would be Indicate Europe, which I take part also in the organization. And this is the matter of people. It's one of the smaller things, it's not as big as the United States one, but it's just cozy and lovely. And it's hard to try, for example, Bavarian food when I'm sitting in here. And that's a huge part of events for me. So I can only, I don't know, order a sausage pizza or something. Sorry, that's not Bavarian food.
And when, let's say, in 2023, we can go everywhere, we are triple vaccinated, mutants are only fought in Africa, where would you go? Would you send, or where would you send an indie? Would you send him to GDC? Would you send him to E3? Would you say, no, go to Canada, go to Reboot, go to DEFCON? Where would you send someone?
For me, the event scene is going to be entirely different after all of it. A lot of them will move online, will move to a hybrid model, even after we are triple vaccinated and all of those things. So in my perspective, I cannot say. I don't know. Of course, a gig, but you understand, right? The Gaming-Industrie conference. But outside of that, I don't know. It's hard to tell.
So from the point what we were doing at Indie Games Poland, we would maybe say that maybe the American market and with that the American events would be the key for our developers. But would that be GDC? I'm not that sure. Maybe it's too big, too easy to be lost on that. Maybe PAX East and PAX West were quite nicely with the Polish booths that we were building there and with the games we were showing there and with some Polish parties we organized. But really, what will be the scene after the COVID? Who will survive? Because that's also the problem, not only moving events to online. We see some events being cancelled already, and we have another year to survive on this strange situation. And what will exactly be the new normal? Because we're not going back to old normal. There will be some new normal. We don't know that.
And I think even in 2023, something that usually is very helpful for indies is an event that has a pitch and match or meet to match or whatever it's called, platform included. So where you can basically slot in 30-minute meetings, 10 a day, be super wasted after doing them all, but in a really highly efficient way, meet a lot of new publishers, other developers. And if that's online or if that's like more traditional, like Game Connection, for example, doesn't really matter maybe. But something like that will still be what I would advise indies to go to, because you can build up a network really quickly and super efficiently.
I think that it's also quite important to look on what COVID situation did to us and to the indie developers from the perspective that it's quite costly to travel. And to get to the US or to get to the Canada or any other place in the world to attend the event requires a lot of resources to invest in, and you need to have the booth to be noticed, or even the passes to the event are expensive, especially for the starting indie studios. So the COVID situation and the fact that we moved many events to the online environment can be somehow beneficial to those smaller studios, because they can, even though the contact is not that personal as it was before, it is more natural now that we connect via internet. So to pitch the game to someone from the US on the event that is happening online might sometimes be easier than to do that with all the traveling and all the organization required to get to the proper event, the offline one on the other side of the globe. But this is just a different perspective on that.
Okay, let's think more new normal. Travel might be still hard. You got a point. What about local accelerators and incubators? Can they help indie studios to get moving better and faster?
I would just like to jump off one thing that Dominika said, because I think this is quite important. And the bright side of events this year is the fact that they got a lot more accessible. and both in terms of disability, but also in the terms of financial exclusion, for example, visa situation. And that is a great aspect on the Indicate Anywhere, Everywhere. We could see developers from places that could not normally travel to United States because United States laws, and also money, and also the ability to be able to work. So this is something that was actually quite good, and it would be great that we won't lose it in the new normal. So yeah, and back to the question of accelerators that I have no idea about. So bye.
Yeah, we do local accelerators and incubators help indies in Bavaria and Poland, and or is it rather to try it out with your local scene?
I mean, as long as it doesn't really matter what kind of program it is, as long as the transfer of knowledge or transfer of money and funds, it will help the indies. Obviously, in Bavaria, we have the association that's trying to help. We have a lot of developers that are trying to get in touch. Maybe we're working on different programs here and there. Games Bavaria is there as like a big label for everything that unites us. So any kind of this networking knowledge transfer really helps. And of course, if there's an incubator that focuses on that and has a special program for mentors or whatever, that's gonna make it even more professional, that's gonna help. It does.
I think it's also worth thinking about what type of the indie studio is it, whether it's created by the veterans of the industry or by people who have just entered the gaming world and want to make their first game and never were involved in any type of business operations. Because depends on your level of advancement. That will probably define what type of resources you need and to which entity you should direct your communication. Because as the studio created by, let's say, veterans who have the idea on what is important in developing the game, how the process looks like, which with a bit lower risk when it comes to planning the entire process, they might need the capital more than the support of the experienced people from the industry. And once you started, the skills and the understanding of the whole process will probably be of a bigger value than even the initial flow of new resources, because you won't know what to do with them and how to allocate them properly.
I would say that the scene of acceleration in Poland is still underdeveloped. That's the most needing part. That's the most difficult part. The acceleration of or incubation programs that we usually had are often focusing on delivering knowledge, delivering some mentoring, because this is maybe easier to do. While the young teams, probably not the teams of experts, the teams of people that left big studios that Dominika just mentioned, but the young teams that are doing their first game, they need money, and a part of that they need money and funding, and money and funding. Yeah, sure, we need to lead them, we need to explain them things. They want to focus on development too much and will forget about the promotion, will forget about the communication that is necessary because they just want to do games and stuff. But then in the end, it's very often down to money, and if we cannot offer them money as acceleration, then in my opinion, it's not really acceleration, it's some mentoring program or some educational program, stuff like that. And I think I can say it's a thing that Indie Games Poland is repeating over and over. We need more acceleration for the young studios on the beginning step, to have the studios that will be able to scale up, to have the studios that will be 10 people to grow to 20 or 40 people. We need them to reach those 10 people, and that's maybe the place where help now is mostly needed.
Okay, and what are other obstacles or things, challenges you see for the foreseeable future for indies in general in Europe?
I'll use the low-hanging fruit here because it's not tied to Europe, but for every indie and every game dev, making a game that's actually discovered by real people that want to play and pay for it. It's really it's a tough market. It's risky to make games and to stand out, basically. And I think that's not gonna change. And with engines like Unity and more developers joining the market, and Steam now being basically an open platform, and all those changes in the last few years, it just got tougher. So you better listen to the feedback, as Marta mentioned, and make some informed decisions there. You don't have to follow it. It's never about that, but at least try to listen to it, and yeah, so you can avoid some of the major risks of failing, hopefully.
So yeah, the market is getting gradually more difficult with too many games being produced. Yeah, I said that. And I think COVID made the releases, especially the releases for the smallest team, even more difficult. So we hear and we read from some media that games are doing greatly under the COVID because people game more. But I think it ends up mostly with the biggest studios, biggest companies that have great reach, and they manage without events, they manage without other things. It's probably a little bit down to free-to-play and mobile more than to premium PC and stuff like that. And it seems to us that game releases maybe became even more difficult because there are no expos where you could show your game to gamers, to media, to influencers. Obviously, you can reach influencers on your own, but since everyone moved to doing that because there are no events, their demands went even higher. Obviously, you can reach media without events, but it's the same story. They are overcrowded with requests from developers to write about their games. There is some trouble ongoing with game releases from the smallest studios.
Okay, well, the indie apocalypse is always looming, right? So yeah, that's what it is. Does the audience have any questions to all those expert panelists that have proven their position in indie and beyond? Okay, don't see any questions. So yeah, do you have any final remarks to give to indies who are viewing our stream or watch it on YouTube later?
I would maybe drop one more on this advice for young teams from Poland and maybe from elsewhere. I would love to see them searching for things wider. So in Poland, we have this tendency that Polish young studios are connecting business-wise with Polish companies. Would that be investors? Would that be publishers? Would that be some other teams? And I think looking wider, looking elsewhere would bring more possibilities, maybe. Obviously, I don't want to take away Polish studios from Polish publishers. I would love Polish publishers to do more non-Polish games as their publishing. I think this industry that we are all in is so globalized, uncomparable to any other. So restraining yourself just to your nearest surrounding, obviously it's easier. We are under the same law with Polish companies if we sign them. But if you look broader, you will probably be able at least to this more informed choice. I don't say choose non-Polish company. I say compare more options.
That is a very good remark.
We'll just suggest to stay safe and wear a mask.
Yeah. Thank you all for the really nice panel and for taking the time to be online with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Dieter. Thanks to all our panelists, and thank you for a very, very interesting discussion.